And here we're going to talk about psychosocial development. Uh, you can think of this as uh, how our personality develops, how our identity develops, and the interactions that we have that affect us as we get older or as we develop. Now I'm going to talk about personalities and identities. I want to focus mostly at first on attachments. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how your parents affect your personality or identity. Then I'm going to take some time to talk about Erikson's psychosocial development. And then finally, I'll briefly hit on gender. Now, one of the first things that we sometimes think about when we talk about personality and identity is your temperament. But now, your temperament is inborn for the most part. Uh, Moms will sometimes tell you, I always knew little Billy was going to be rambunctious. He's been like that since he was in my belly. Or, I always knew Susie was going to be quiet and uh, low energy because she's always been like that since when I was pregnant. What they're talking about is temperament. That is the level of energy that they have, the level of acceptance to new experiences. As an adult, we talk about temperament can be a lot of things. How extroverted or introverted you are, how much energy you have, how interested you are in participating with others. But when we look at babies, that's very hard to do. So we instead talk about easy children, difficult children, and slow to warm up children. Easy children are kids who tend to have a pretty positive uh, temperament. If you do something new with them, they tend to just roll with the punches. They don't cry as often. They're more easily soothed. Difficult children, almost the exact opposite. If a difficult child is asked to do something new, they have to meet a new person, they have to go to a new place, they have a normal schedule and that schedule gets messed up somehow, they are quite difficult. They're going to cry a lot more. It's going to be hard to soothe them. Um, and then, of course, the slow to warm up child, kind of in between there. This kid, when there's ever something new, when something changes, they tend to not like change, and so they're going to cry. But with time, they will sort of come around and warm up to whatever the changes are. So with temperament, it's the most sort of biological component of your personality. Now, I want to talk here a little bit about attachment. Um, Attachment, you're going to be reading about John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. John Bowlby is the first researcher to look at what happened when children have to experience uh, being separated from their parents. He worked with a lot of people who had been to war or sort of war had happened in their countries, and children had to be separated from their parents because of that. And what he found is that when children are separated from their parents, they have a great deal of anxiety, separation anxiety. They're going to cry. They're going to find it difficult to do something new, to interact with others. It can be very traumatic. Bowlby also described what a child looks like when they have a secure attachment, when attachment is working correctly. And usually the way they work is that when the child is overwhelmed, they seek the parent. They often hug the parent, uh, try to get that contact comfort from the parent. And then once they've done that, they're sort of fortified. It's as if though mom and dad have charged them. And now the child can leave the parent behind for a while and go do something else, play, talk with a friend, etc. Unfortunately, what we find, of course, is that not everybody has a secure attachment. And that's what Mary Ainsworth looks at. She's doing research with children or about children that don't have a secure attachment. And so these kids are not getting energy from mom and dad. They're not getting that recharge from mom and dad. And so uh, they don't interact well with the rest of their environment. Now, we often call her research method the strange situation. Basically, what happens, mom and dad are put in a room. Sometimes there's toys in the room, things like that. Then mom is asked to leave. Obviously, the baby will cry when mom leaves. And we look at what happens when mom comes back and see how attached the child is to mom. In other words, how well the child uses the parent to sort of fortify him or herself. I'm about to show you a video, but before I do, I just kind of want to show you the short version of the 4 types of attachment that you're going to see. We're actually only going to see 3, and I'll kind of describe the 4th one. If you look down here at the bottom, you will see that there's this little picture. Here is in our scenario, it's going to be a little girl, and she finds dad because her battery is sort of not charged. But the longer she holds on to dad, the more her battery charges, and then of course the sort of better she's going to feel. Now, if you follow these little comic books on the internet, uh, you know that this is in fact like a relationship one, and this is actually it makes perfect sense that she would have created this. Uh, excuse me, strip, because your attachment style to your parent does translate to your attachment style to your romantic partner. I want to briefly touch on that a little later. But here I want to show you what the attachments are. The secure attachment, which is what we would like to see. The avoidant dismissing attachment, which is a type of insecure attachment. The resistant ambivalent attachment, which is a type of insecure attachment. And then finally, the disorganized fearful, which is also a type of.
This experiment, which I watched through a two-way mirror, is designed to gauge how secure is the crucial relationship between mother and child.
Value of the test has been established in studies that would watch a child 1-year-old and then follow it up and interview them about the relationships to their parents when they were 21 years old. So we're quite confident in the long-term significance of this relationship.
After several minutes play, the mother is signaled to leave the room. The key moment in the experiment is the child's reaction to her mother's return.
The important clue is whether the baby is able to become calmed down by the contact with the mother and get back to play. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. You see, the mother was out. She was only interested in the mother, no interest in the toys. Now she's in contact with the mother. She's beginning to show a little interest in the environment. And shortly, she'll be right back with the toys from the start.
So you would call this a secure?
Yes.
First of all, you see that the girl, when mom steps out, she begins to cry. When mom returns from being outside of the room, the girl calls to mom, basically, lets mom pick her up. The girl holds on to mom, and she uses mom to comfort herself, or to let mom comfort her. And with that, then she gets able to stop crying and then start playing in the room again. That first one is the secure attachment.
Goes to the door following her. Now, we sent the mother right back in, but the point here is not to distress the baby. We're just trying to challenge it. The baby puts her hands to her face, sad expression, face down. When she picks her up, she keeps her head down, her arms out, and then she sits in the chair holding the baby. The baby's still sullen. He's low-keyed.
So you would call this insecure?
Yes, insecure. He's avoidant. He's not engaging her, and it's not, the reunion is not effective. It's important to remember here that the thing that upset him was her absence. Her return should be the solution to his problem.
Now, the second clip there is about the avoidant child. You notice that the baby guy cried. When mom came back, the first thing the baby did was put his hands over his own eyes as if to look away from her. When mom tries to pick up the baby, he actually pulls away from her. And when she's holding him, she literally, or I should say the baby literally looks away from mom, trying to keep as much distance from her. This is the avoidant child. If we were to see this child with mom a few years from now, the baby wouldn't even cry when mom left the room. They might look at the mom and sort of feel exhausted by her leaving.
This is another pattern that we see in babies who are not good at using their mother as a secure base at home. This baby is also insecure. But you'll see, we got a look at his play before the separation. Mother's left. When she returns, she picks him up. He can't calm down. He's still upset. She offers a toy to amuse him or to comfort him or to distract him, and he slaps it away. She offers another. He slaps it away. He's angry. We call these babies resistant or ambivalent because they both want her back and yet can't use the contact. We think that the difficulty is that in the past, when he sought comfort, she's been inconsistent as to whether she's available and responsive or not.
Now, the third clip you saw there was for the resistant child. Again, this is a type of insecure attachment. And here, the child looks to mom. They're trying to recharge the battery, but no matter how long they hold on to mom, it just doesn't feel like mom is recharging them. Now, why does this happen? This happens because mom is either not responsive or rather inconsistent. For the secure child, when the child cries, when the child is frustrated, mom and dad come and say, "What's wrong?" They validate the child. "Oh, that must be so hard." If the child is crying, they just hold on to the baby and say, "It's okay, I'm here for you." And they do things that make the baby feel validated, and they make the baby feel like, "Oh, mom is here to protect me." And so the baby, the child, learns to look to mom and dad for sort of comfort. And so they develop that secure attachment. But parents aren't always very good about doing that. Sometimes baby comes to cry, and mom will say, "Big boys don't cry," or "You're always crying," or "That's nothing to cry about." Sometimes mom and dad might get angry with the child. And so that's going to probably develop that avoidance style where the child learns to not look for the parent. And even if the child needs some comfort, like the child did in the video, when they see mom, they're like, no, not you. You're not going to help me out at all, right? It's kind of what they're feeling. And so they don't use mom and dad at all for that. The resistant child has a mom or dad who is inconsistent. Sometimes they're good about saying, don't worry about it. Oh, I'm here for you. And sometimes they're not good at that. They tend to do the go away and play somewhere else, or I don't want to hear it. And so the child wants the comfort from mom and dad, but they don't know how to get it, even though they're grabbing onto mom and dad for dear life. Now, I didn't talk about the disorganized, fearful child, because this child is usually related to abuse or this type of attachment, especially in children. In adult, it could be some other things, but in children, almost always it has to do with abuse, physical, sexual. Maybe mom and dad are depressed or have some other form of mental illness, and essentially the child is neglected or not taken care of correctly. And so I'm going to show you a quick little video. Uh, this isn't really a disorganized child, but it's a good visual. So let me just put that. Okay, what you saw there is that the child runs to the parent, then they see the parent, and they kind of get scared and they run away. Now, this baby you're seeing here is not disorganized. The reason the baby did that in this video was because I think grandpa made a roar sound and the baby got scared. But the behavior is similar to what we would see with a disorganized child, but it's hard to find videos for that. Okay. Now let me talk quickly about each uh, attachment style separately. So I already talked about the secure attachment. Here the child uses mom and dad as a safe base. So they come to mom, they get re-energized, and they walk away. If they get tired, if they get upset, if they're like, I haven't seen mom and dad for a while, they might get scared, run back to mom and dad. Grab them and feel secure and walk away. This child is easily soothed by the parent. Again, as I mentioned, because this parent tends to respond to the child's needs. If you have a secure attachment to your parent, there's a good chance that you're going to have a secure attachment to your romantic partner. And it'll be the same way. As an adult, sometimes we get frustrated. And some people look to their partner to hug them, to kiss them, to have the partner say, don't worry, I'm here for you. And that fills the adult with a sense of comfort and security. And now they can go off to work or do something else because they know that they're secure in their relationship. The avoidant child does not use the parent as a safe base. They're actually very independent and they don't seek contact. That sounds good that they're independent. That's going to affect them in their adult relationships. Now, why are these kids like this? Because the parent is insensitive to the child's needs. They tend to be rejecting. I don't want to see you cry right now. You're too big to be crying. Boys don't cry. And so the parent doesn't help the child in their difficult time. So what's happening to the avoidant adult? Well, when the avoidant adult gets frustrated, instead of going to the partner, they walk away from the partner. That doesn't always mean breaking up. It might mean that they're just, going out with friends or going out to the bar. Or they just want to be alone for long periods of time. If you have an avoidant attachment style and your partner is secure, the secure partner can do well with an avoidant attachment. They might get a little annoyed by it, but they're going to be okay. But if you have that avoidant style, you should probably not date someone who is resistant. So let me first talk about the child. The resistant child is clingy. They don't want to let mom go. When mom tries to comfort the baby or dad tries to comfort the baby, the baby will reject the parent. Even though they're clingy, even though they don't want to let the parent go, they reject the parent because in the past the parent hasn't been good or at least consistent about comforting the child. And so the child does not get that secure feeling. Um, and mom and dad might say, go play with the other little kids. And this child probably will not do that because they are incredibly clingy and they have not felt soothed enough to leave mom and dad. Again, it's because mom and dad is inconsistent. Sometimes they do a good job of I love you and you're great. And don't worry, oh, it's okay to cry. And I'm here for you. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're rejecting. I don't want to see you cry right now. Go over there if you're going to cry. And so the parent is kind of unattuned to the child's needs, or they just actively sort of reject the parent. This person, as an adult, the resistant or ambivalent adult, is also incredibly clingy. This is the partner who's always calling you to say, "Why didn't you call me as soon as you got out of work?" They're always sort of afraid that you don't really want to be with them, that you're trying to avoid. You're trying to avoid them, or you're trying to break up with them, that you don't really love them. When a resistant adult and an avoidant adult are together, that's not a good relationship. The more clingy the resistant individual is, the more avoidant the avoidant partner is. And so eventually the resistant or ambivalent individual will think, oh, well, I guess this relationship is over. This person doesn't love me. And they'll start to pull away. When they start to pull away, that's when the avoidant person gets interested again. Because now you're not being clingy, or the person isn't being clingy. And so now they're more willing to be part of the relationship and do more intimate things. Now the resistant person goes, oh, you really do love me. They get super clingy again. And now the avoidant person pushes away. And that dynamic can be awful in a relationship. Now, the disorganized child will likely become what we call a fearful adult. And this person has both problems of the resistant and the avoidant person. They are very clingy, but they don't seek attachment. And so this person is probably not going to do well with any relationship. As a child, they have that disorganized behavior where sometimes they run to mom and dad, but sometimes they act scared and they run away. Sometimes they will literally cower in a corner. Again, these are all red flags that there's something wrong at home. Possible physical abuse, psychologically disturbed parents, parents who are abusing drugs, or parents who are putting the child's life in danger. All right. What I want to talk about now is different parenting styles. Now, if you look at the chart up here, you'll notice that there are two variables that we're looking at: parental bonding, how warm or cold the parent is, and parental control, how well the parents control the child, low or high. For bonding, some parents are very warm. They're good at saying, I love you, you're the greatest, high five, let's go out for ice cream, you deserve it, you're so smart, you're so strong, etc. That is a warm parent, a parent who seems to enjoy being with their child. But not all parents are like that. Some parents are rather cold. This parent, the cold parent, isn't going to do a good job of saying, I love you and you're the greatest and you're so smart. They're instead going to say, you're supposed to be doing your homework. You're supposed to be getting an A. You don't, I'm not going to give you an ice cream for that. That's what you're supposed to be working at. They're not good at hugs. They're not good at I love yous. They're not good at I love you. They are cold. And then, of course, for parental control, some parents are very good, high, at having rules that the child knows what the rules are, so they communicate the rules to the child, that there are consequences and the child knows what the consequences are. And finally, that when the child breaks the rules, the consequences come. Not all parents are good at doing that. Some parents have low control, and that could mean that there are no rules, or that the child doesn't know the rules, the child doesn't know the consequences, or there are rules and consequences, but whenever the child breaks the rules, the consequences never actually come. So, with that in mind, the first kind of parent we're looking at is the authoritarian parent. Okay? This parent has a lot of control. There are rules, those rules are communicated to the child, and there are consequences for breaking the rules. Uh, these kids are great to have in a classroom. They always follow the rules. They don't talk too much. They don't talk back almost at all. Um, and uh, you tend to love those kids if you happen to be a teacher or a daycare worker because they don't give you a lot of trouble. Because the child knows that if they mess up, mom and dad are going to be upset. Unfortunately, these parents are rather cold, and so they value obedience usually more than learning how to do things correctly or why doing something is important. And they're not good at hugs and kisses or high fives. There's very few rewards, if any, and usually there are a lot of punishments, more timeouts, more control of the child, and of course, the authoritarian parent is more likely to hit than what we'll talk about next, which is going to be the authoritative parent. So, as I mentioned, these kids tend to be great in a classroom, but they lack social skills. They show poor initiative. They always wait for an adult to tell them what to do. They don't do things on their own. They often compare themselves to other people, and they tend to either have hostilities or fear. If you live in a house with an adult who's always telling you you're wrong, who's always punishing you or yelling at you, there's a good chance you might feel a great deal of hostility after a while. Or you become incredibly fearful. And so now you let everybody walk all over you and you never stand up for yourself. If you're a parent, you don't want your kids to be like that. You want your kids to be have the good social skills and to be happy where they are, and of course to stand up for themselves if they ever have to. Now you'll notice that it says cultural differences there. Um, some cultures value the authoritarian parent as the best kind of parent. A lot of Latino, Middle Eastern, Asian cultures value the authoritarian parent because the authoritarian parent makes kids who follow directions and do as they're told. And that tends to be something that many cultures value. Now, if you live in the United States, um, we don't value authoritarian parents as much as some other cultures. We tend to value the authoritative parent more. Uh, the authoritative parent is good at doing both things. There are rules, the child knows the rules, there are consequences, and the consequences come when the child breaks the rules. But this parent is good at hugging and kissing and saying, "You're the greatest and I love you," and high five. This parent also allows for more independence. They are going to wait and let you figure it out a little longer than the authoritarian parent who's going to stop you right away when you're doing something wrong and say, "That's not how you do it." The authoritative parent is going to give you more leeway and let you figure it out on your own more. Now they'll come in. This isn't a bad parent. They'll come in when you're frustrated, but they'll allow you to at least try it. And that might mean some work you're doing, but it might also be some relationship, a friendship, or something else that you're working on. These kids are the most socially competent. They tend to be more self-reliant and socially responsible. And so these tend to be the kind of kids that we want. We want our kids to make it out in the world without having to have other people tell them what to do. We want them to be self-reliant and socially responsible and competent. We want them to have friends and good relationships. And so we tend to value that authoritative parent more. Now, some parents are what we would call permissive. These parents have very low control over the child. They often have feelings that maybe we shouldn't be putting so many rules and demands on children. Kids will be kids, they might say, or kids gotta learn to grow on their own, or something along those lines. Unfortunately, get it done. You've never done anything like that. I think I can do it. Okay? They're going to say to you. Because this person feels like they have a lot of independence. The person who develops shame and doubt, because when they try to cut the paper on their own, mom says, "You cut it all wrong," and the child feels like a failure. Or they stir the pot and they spill something, and mom says, "You spilled everything." Or maybe mom just says, "No, you can't put on the shirt by yourself. You don't even know how to do that." Or, "No, you're not going to stir the pot. You're just going to spill everything." That child is going to feel like, I can't do it. I'm bad somehow. That's why mom is upset. A child at this age doesn't understand that, oh, my physical dexterity isn't good enough to stir this pot in the way mom needs. They don't understand that. That's too complicated for them. The way they understand it is, I must be a bad person. That's why mom doesn't let me do it. That's why dad doesn't let me do this. And so they instead develop shame and doubt. And that shame and doubt is going to continue throughout their life. You know, an adult in your life who, when you tell them, let's go do this or you should do that, they say things like, no, I'm scared. Not sometimes, all the time they feel that way. They're going to feel like, oh, people are going to laugh at me. People are going to get angry with me. I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Or they might also be very dependent on others. Do you think I should do it? They'll ask you, even though you have no idea what they're talking about or what they're going through. How do I do it? They might ask you. You do it, because these people feel a great deal of shame and doubt. Whenever they do something wrong, they feel like, oh my God, this is awful. I Everybody's upset with me. I'm a bad person somehow. Now, the next stage, stage three, is initiative versus guilt. Uh, in this stage, the child is trying to determine, am I good or am I bad? And the way they are answering this question is by trying to do things that adults do. So they see big sister playing the guitar and they want to play the guitar. They often don't ask, they just take the guitar. They see dad playing with the tools and they want to play with the tools as well. They might grab dad's hammer or dad's drill, play around in mom's paperwork or big brother's sneakers, uh, because they're trying to figure out a way to fit into adult society. Now, when the child is made to feel successful, they develop a sense of initiative, a sense of, no one has to tell me what to do. I know how to do it. Um, this creates a feeling of purpose as well. This is especially as they get older, they feel like they have a purpose in life. Um, and these people, when mistakes happen, they understand that, yeah, everybody makes mistakes. I'll just learn from this mistake, because they just keep on going, they keep on trying, they keep on doing things on their own. But when you make the child feel like a failure, right, and you just need to say, hey, don't play with big sister's guitar, you'll break it. But if you make the child feel like a failure, then the child will develop guilt. Now, this child and eventually adult will feel like a nuisance, like I'm a bad person. I'm always bothering other people. People don't actually want to be around me, and they don't have initiative. They wait for others to tell them what to do. You might have someone in your life and you tell them, hey, do this specific thing. And they'll do that specific thing. And maybe there was an extra step, putting things away or wrapping it up, but they won't do it, not until you tell them what to do, because they don't have a sense of initiative. They don't do things on their own. They always wait for someone else to do it. And of course, when they make mistakes, then they always feel it's my fault. Everybody hates me. I messed up for everybody, and uh, essentially they avoid doing things that will make them feel guilty. Now you'll notice stage 4 there occurs during uh, school when the child is in around elementary school. And this is industry versus inferiority. This child is trying to figure out, how can I be good? How do I become a good person? And the way they try to figure that out or to answer that question is by doing the things in their life. They're learning math, they're going to try to do math. They're learning to be sociable with their friends, they're going to try to be sociable. If the child is made to feel like a success, they'll develop industry, a feeling of, I want to do it because I want to do it. I want to clean my house because I want to live in a clean house. I want to do my math homework because I want to learn about math. I want to socialize with friends because I value my friends and our social life. Um, However, when you make the child feel like a failure, they develop a sense of inferiority, a sense of, I'm no good at that. And it's not just that I'm not no good at that one thing, that means I'm bad sort of in general. Everybody else is better than me. No one does things as poorly as I do. So they feel very incompetent, and they again don't want to do things because they always feel like they are incompetent at doing the task. Now, again, you'll notice that I want to repeat that the reason I'm talking about these three stages together is because they have that success failure dynamic all throughout them. These three stages also, I like to talk about them together because they also have to do with what we sometimes call the participation trophies stage. Um, in our culture, if you're on the internet, if you listen to comedians, if you listen to daytime TV, people hate participation trophies. But really, they hate it because they don't know what they are. If you're getting a participation trophy when you're 15, yeah, that's going to be a problem. But that's not the time period that we're talking about. Participation trophies are specifically for kids who are in stages 2, 3, and 4. So they're around 1 year old to maybe around 12 years old. So, why are participation trophies important? Because of this good bad dynamic. When the child is made to feel good, they develop those good personality traits. But when they're made to feel bad, like failures, then they develop those negative personality traits. But now here's the catch: a 5 year old doesn't understand that the reason he didn't win the baseball game is because the other team practiced a little more, because the other team made more runs, because the other team had this skill and our team didn't. That's too complicated for a 5 year old. What the child develops is a feeling of, oh, the reason I lost is because I did something wrong or I did something bad. Now that's going to turn into guilt, or it might turn to shame and doubt if the child is 1 to 3, or it might turn into a sense of inferiority if the child is around 5 to 12. You might think to yourself, hey, wait a second, that a 12-year-old understands the rules of the game, and that's true. But that 12-year-old is still uh, having more emotions about their life than they are having deep cognitive thoughts about whether success occurs because of how hard they try. But 12-year-old is right there, that cusp. Now, the reason people who don't like participation trophies talk bad about them is because they feel like if you pamper kids too much, then they won't push to persevere. When something bad happens, they won't continue, they won't fight through it. But the truth is actually the opposite, especially here when we're talking about these stages. When you make a child feel successful, they have autonomy, a sense of, I can get it done, I can do it. They have initiative, a feeling of, I don't need to wait for somebody else to tell me what to do. I can do it, and a sense of industry. I want to do it because I want to do it. When you make the child feel like a failure, then they develop shame and doubt, guilt, and a sense of inferiority, and all of those things will make the child avoid the work. The GIF you're seeing there is of Dominique Dawes, I believe, and uh, she had broken her ankle, but she still had one more event to do. And you know what she did? She had a sense of autonomy, a sense of initiative, a sense of industry. She said, you know what? My ankle is hurt, but I can still do it. And that's the kind of personal strength we want to be able to give our children. When we do the opposite and make the children feel shame and doubt, guilty, or inferior, then any trouble that they come to, they will uh, stop trying. They'll give up on the game. They'll give up on the friendship. They'll give up on the work because anything that goes wrong, they don't have enough of those positive traits to push through. Now we all know this instinctively. When a little kid shows you a painting that they drew with crayons, and they go, "This is a tree, and this is mommy, and this is the doggy." None of us look at it and say, that doesn't look like your dog, or that doesn't look like your mom. That doesn't look like a tree. We all instinctively know that we would be hurting the child if we did that to them. And so we say, oh, isn't that beautiful? Oh, aren't you amazing? Because with the hopes that given enough of that push, the child will continue and develop those positive personal traits. All right. The next stage we're going to talk about here is in adolescence, and it's what we call identity versus role confusion. And this is nothing like the other three, where there's a success failure aspect to it. What's happening here is that the child is trying to figure out who they are. And uh, early on, if you ask like a 9-year old, an 8-year old, what makes little Tommy Tommy, they're going to tell you, I have brown hair, and I live in 123 Main Street, and my mom is Susie, and my best friend is Billy. You guys say. But as the child is uh, entering their preteens and their teenage years, they start to try and figure out who they are. And now it's not just that I like playing Pokemon, is that I'm the kind of person who plays Pokemon. And I want to wear the right clothes and I want to talk the right way. It's not that I like to play FIFA, is that I'm the kind of person who plays FIFA. And maybe I'm a little sportier and maybe I, like to dress a certain way. And we all remember this in middle school and high school, where some kids were the jocks and they acted the part and some kids were the goths, and they acted the part. And very seldom did you see one of the goth kids who also played football, or one of the football players who also loved, I don't know, artistic dancing. Um, they tended to play their part. If you did see something like that, one of the goths, maybe their dad forced them to play or to try out for the game or for the team, they got it. And after a few months, they weren't a goth who played football. They changed. Their whole identity changed. They used to wear black. Now they only wear the jerseys and whatnot. They used to talk a certain way, use a certain slang. Now they don't use it anymore. They used to listen to a kind of music. Now they don't listen to that music anymore. They don't hang out with those people anymore. There is just a radical shift in their personality, in their identity. And that's very common in middle school and in early high school. But if that continues to happen into adult life, that might be a sense of role confusion. Essentially, when you're a teenager, you're trying a lot of different things. You're trying different groups, different after school programs, maybe different sports, uh, going on the internet and looking about different topics. Uh, in other words, you're trying to figure out who you are and internalizing the things that you have value for and kind of pushing away the things that you don't value. And when you become an adult, hopefully those values and those likes and that sense of identity will make you feel whole. But if you don't have that, then you may have a sense of role confusion. And you might have a friend who goes from, you know, dressing one way to dressing another way, not not from one day to the other, not like, oh, I'm just an eclectic person and I like trying different styles. That person exists. But the role confused person is the kind of person that when all my friends are into MMA fighting, I'm into MMA fighting. And I'm obsessive about it. And it becomes my whole identity until I stop hanging out with those friends. And now my new friends are into taking care of cows. And now I become very cowboyish and I only listen to country music and I dress a certain way. And I don't do any of those other things that I used to do when I did MMA fighting. I My entire identity changes. That is a role confused person. Sometimes people who have role confusion will do what we sometimes call a negative identity. So maybe I don't know who I am as a person, but I know that I'm a man. And so I'm a man. As a man, then I don't do anything that women do. And so I'm not going to buy this women's tea, uh, even though it's the exact same tea or close to the exact same tea as the one that is in the man's box. But I'm not going to buy the woman's box one because it's a woman's box. And I won't I don't know, have an apple teeny because that's a girl's drink. And if I have to sign my name and all you have is a girly pen, I'm gonna get really angry with you. How are you gonna ask me to, sign with that silly pen? Because I don't really know who I am, and so I cling very strongly to this version, very sort of shallow sense of identity. And it's not just male, female, although in our culture that's a very obvious one that some people do. Sometimes it's just something sort of generic. Maybe mom and dad were kind of religious, and I I avoid that. I have the negative attitude towards them, and so I go. I don't do anything my parents do, including their religiosity. Now, this doesn't have to do with like atheism. You might be an atheist because you have a different set of values. But the person who is role confused is or has a negative identity is doing it specifically because they don't want to be like the parent. If you ask them why are you rejecting your parents' religion, they don't really know why, and they're just going to say cliche things about that. And if you push them, you might actually figure out that they actually kind of do believe their parents' religion. They're just sort of going against it. So again, that is that role confusion or negative identity. Uh, Now, especially if you don't achieve a sense of identity, that might affect the next stage, which occurs in young adulthood. Most of you are going through this stage now, and this is intimacy versus isolation. Here, you're looking for a partner. Now, every culture has a different uh, definition for what a good partner is, and you have internalized your culture's version of a good partner. If you lived 50 years ago and you were a man, you might think, I want a girlfriend or a wife who is going to take care of my house and is going to take care of the children. And it would never dawn on you that you would want a girlfriend who goes to sporting events with you or who is into the kind of sci-fi that you're into. And if you were a woman 50 years ago, you were probably thinking about a man who uh, you were thinking about a man who was going to provide for the family and had a job and was capable of maybe buying a house. And you were not thinking about having this man go with you shopping or being able to talk to him about your difficult times. because you hadn't internalized those things. If those two people met, they would have a good partnership because they were kind of looking for each other and they could see each other as partners. Today, that's very different. Today, when we think of a partner, is someone who's going to be there for me emotionally, who wants to hang out and do things with me for fun. Um, but regardless, whether it was 50 years ago or today, in a different culture or in our culture, we're looking for a partner, someone that you can feel this person is in it with me. We're going to beat this life thing together. And when you do that, you develop a sense of intimacy. When you find that person, you develop a sense of intimacy, a sense of you and I, we're going to make it together. We're going to figure it out. But if you can't do that, you might feel a sense of isolation, a sense of being alone. Mind you, this doesn't mean you're actually alone. You can have a romantic partner, but you are not connecting with them the way you think you should be. And so you feel a sense of isolation. Um, Now, one of the biggest issues with Erikson stages is that for Erikson, this happened almost immediately out of high school. And today we understand that this is more related to culture and when your culture expects you to, find a partner and get married. Um, the mean age or the average age of people getting married has changed dramatically. I think I have a slide for that. If you look at this slide, you'll notice that in the 1950s, men were getting married at about 22 years old, and women were getting married at about 20 years old. And that continued more or less throughout the 60s. In the 70s, it started to go up. In the 80s, it went up more drastically. And that has continued until today. The average age, not everyone, but the average age of a man getting married for the first time is 29.8 years old. That's almost 30. And for women, the average age is 27.8. And so a lot of stuff is happening there that's cultural. Today, more people want to find themselves. They give themselves more time to enter or to finish that identity versus role confusion stage. Uh, and part of that, in our culture especially, is finding a job you want. And so, because of that, people push off getting married further and further up. And so, culturally, that has changed dramatically. And yet, we still all, for the most part, are looking for that sense of intimacy and trying to avoid that sense of isolation. Now, the next stage here is generativity versus stagnation. And this happens in middle adulthood. And so, what's going to happen here is that during middle adulthood, you're going to get this feeling, this desire that you want to give back to the next generation. You've learned a lot of things. You have 30, 40 years of learning things in life. And now you start to have this feeling of, I want to teach younger people all the things that I've learned. And when you can do that, then you develop a sense of generativity. So if you have kids, if you have grandkids during that time, great. You have someone to teach catch, or teach them how to play catch, or teach them how to do their makeup, or teach them about taxes or about life or whatever. If you don't have that person, that feeling doesn't go away. You still have this desire to give back. And if you cannot give back, then you might feel a sense of stagnation, a sense of feeling stuck. Let me pause there. A lot of people will look outside of their family to try and give back. They will maybe try to mentor somebody at work. You might have an older person at your job who teaches you how to do things, not just things from work, but oftentimes they'll tell you about their life and they'll tell you about all the mistakes they made and the way they should have lived their life. And they tell you about their successes and give you pointers on how to be successful because this person is trying to give back. The desire exists for generativity. But if you can't get it from anywhere, not from your kids, not from your grandkids, not from strangers out, then you might feel a sense of stagnation, a sense of feeling stuck. And you start to wonder, was my life worth anything? And so that feeling sort of develops, and you develop a sense of stagnation. And the last stage here is adult. It happens in late adulthood, old age, and we call this ego integrity versus despair. Some people in their late adult life, they look back at their life and they think, you know what? My life was good. I did the best that I could, and I learned the most that I could, and I lived life well. And these people are likely to develop a sense of integrity. So that in their adult years, in their old age, they want to still live life. They want to go out, they want to hang out, they want to spend time with their friends, with their family, they want to travel because they feel my life isn't done yet. Now, some people don't have that. Some people, when they look back at their life, they think my life really wasn't worth so much. And my life really didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. And this person might fall into despair. They will sometimes sit down and not do very much. They're just kind of waiting to die. This person is more prone to depression, more prone to getting sick. They often think about dying more. They're always talking about, oh, when I die, people are going to feel bad. And they don't mean like, oh, people are going to miss me. What they're thinking is, I'm going to ruin people's day by dying. Um, People are going to have to take care of me. And they feel a great deal of despair and depression. To be fair, sometimes despair can occur because of illness. If you sort of get sick, um, and now you can't do a lot, well, it's easy to fall into despair. But some people get sick, they lose a leg, and they still push through it. They still want to fight. There is a good chance that that person has a great deal of ego integrity because they still want to live. They still feel like my life is worth fighting for, and so they're less likely to fall into that despair. Let me make one more point about Erikson before I move on. You'll notice that Erikson is probably one of the first researchers to talk about stages that begin early in life, in at birth, and continue all the way to your later years, your old age. A lot of the stage theories tend to focus on one specific part of your life, but Erikson explains that we go through a bunch of crises through our lives, and they occur as almost as soon as we're born, and they continue to occur into our old age. Right, let me make one more point here about gender. Uh, now, part of your personality and identity obviously has to do with your gender. Some of these things are biological. A lot of what gender is related to sex. Your Whether you are a male or a female, and there are specific things that affect this, biological things like your hormone. If you have more testosterone, you are likely to be more aggressive, to be a little bit more independent, more forceful, more sexual. And if you have less testosterone, you might be a little bit less uh, aggressive, uh, less forceful, etc. We can look at animals and see that this also occurs in animals. And when we look at animals, let's say like the hyena, where testosterone is reversed, the females have more testosterone than males. And what do we see? We see females that are more aggressive, more prone to dominance than the males. Um, but a lot of what gender is incredibly psychological. Um, how you dress has nothing to do with your sex. It has nothing to do with uh, your hormone or even your genitalia. this is just something your culture said. Men dress this way and females dress that way. Um, and so our culture is kind of evolving in the middle of a evolution. And so we are more accepting of people who might be transgender. That is someone who is born biologically being one gender. We say they might be assigned a male at birth or assigned female at birth, but they in fact feel psychologically like they're the opposite gender. They feel like they are a man uh, trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body. And so we have great ways to sort of fix that. Well, some of those things have to do with biology, right? Transitioning means the hormones blocking the biological hormones and taking the hormones that would allow this person to look and feel more like their psychological gender, and surgeries which might make their genitalia look more uh, like the genitalia of their psychological gender. But that isn't the only way uh, excuse me, our culture is sort of evolving here. Um, it wasn't that long ago that if you were a girl, you were expected to dress like a woman and only like a woman. And if you dressed too masculine, then people would look at you or berate you or even push you out of their life. Today, we don't have that. In our culture, women can dress very masculine and they can go out and dress very feminine in the same day. We totally accept that as perfectly normal for females. It's a little less normal for males. And first of all, when males dress unlike males, they dress more like females, we tend to take that as a specific statement about their personal gender or maybe about culture in general. Um, and I'm sorry, uh, it's it's more likely in men that men are still expected to act a specific way, and if they don't, it's usually because they're part of a sexual minority, being the transgender or being um, gay or something, fluid or something along those lines. Although we're doing a lot better, we're still, especially for men, this is one of the few things in our culture and in life where the masculine privilege doesn't really play a part. Where actually men are actually required to be even more masculine than women are required to be feminine. But in any case, uh, these are psychological things that affect our identity, and of course, in part, it borders lines with biological things that affect our identity and personality. All right, guys, that is chapter 9, and I do want to remind you to work on your chapter 9 activities. I have changed some of those dates around, so please make sure you're doing them on time. Uh, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Have a great one.